When you take a block action with a player, that player can try to knock down a player of the opposing team. In order to take a block action, you have to be adjacent to that player. For instance, this mummy over here is adjacent to this human lineman, which means he can take a block action. When making a block action, these special block dice are used. In order to see how many blocking dice you roll, you have to compare each other's strength, as noted on this blocking table over here. If both players are of equal strength, you roll 1 dice, and that result is used. If one player is stronger, 2 block dice are rolled. It doesn't matter whether the defender or the attacking player is stronger, you roll 2 dice and the stronger player gets to choose the result. If one player is more than twice as strong than the other player, then you roll 3 block dice. Now several results are possible on the block dice. The first is if you roll this skull and this gets picked as a result, it would mean that the attacking player is down. In this case, my mummy blocking the human lineman would be knocked down and possibly injured. The second result, which is this skull and explosion symbol, means that both players are knocked down. In this case, both players are placed prone and possibly injured, unless either of them has the block skill. Block means you are not knocked down as a result of this result on the block dice, which means that if my mummy would have the block skill, only the human player would be knocked down, or if both of them have block skill, none of them is knocked down. The third possible result is this arrow over here, which means you manage to push back the defender. In this case, the defender isn't knocked down, but he's pushed away from the square he currently occupies. Now, when a pushback result is picked, the attacking player always has the choice where to push his opponent through. This is always a choice of 3 squares. The first square you can pick is the square directly behind the player. So in this case, I'm attacking this player and I can push him straight back 1 square. The other 2 choices are the squares directly next to it, so I can push him back left or back right. This is basically the same when making a diagonal block. So in this case, I would have the opportunity to push the player back to this square in a straight line, to the right or to the left of my player. So these 3 squares are target squares when making a diagonal pushback. After you've pushed back an opponent, you have the opportunity to make a follow-up move. This is a free move and it will take the blocking player to the square that the player being pushed back previously occupied. So in this case, if this player would take a follow-up move, it would be moved to this square. He can also choose not to follow up and just remain in the square he's standing. Now, a follow-up move is always a free move and it's unimpeded by tackle zone. So in this case, I would be leaving this player's tackle zone, but I wouldn't have to make a dodge roll in this case, as this is a special free follow-up move. The next possible result is this explosion result over here. This would mean that the defending player is pushed back and knocked over, which means I get to use the pushback I described earlier. So for instance, I would push back this player to the left and knock him over. In this case also, I would have the opportunity to take a follow-up move if I so desired. The last possible result is this result with an exclamation mark in it. It's also the same explosion symbol, but it has an exclamation mark, and that means that the defending player is pushed back and knocked over, as described previously, unless he has dodge skill. If the defending player has the dodge skill, he is merely pushed back, like the same result when you rolled an arrow. To show you how blocking works, let's take a look at this example. This mummy over here with a strength 5 is attacking this human player with a strength of 3. Like I said on the blocking table, if one player is stronger but not more than twice as strong, 2 dice are rolled. And the strongest player always is the one picking. In this case, the attacking player is the stronger player, he gets to choose the result. This is a pushback result and this is a pushback and knockdown result. So as an attacking player, you'd normally go for that one. In this case, push back your opponent to your desired square and place him knockdown make a follow-up action. Any players knocked down during the block might be injured, but like I said, I'll get back to injuries later on in this tutorial. Would this block have gone the other way around, say for instance the human player attacking the mummy, it would still mean 2 dice are rolled, as one of the 2 players, in this case the defending player, is stronger. Although in this case the attacker rolls the dice, but the defending player gets to pick which result is used. In this case, I would either push back the mummy or push back and knock down the mummy. Now, as the defending player, you'd normally go for the just push back. So in this case, the human player will push back the mummy. He is still the one choosing the square the mummy is pushed back and can decide to follow up or not. So to sum up basic blocking, first you check to see which strength both players have, and then roll the number of dice accordingly, and then the strongest player gets to pick the result and resolve it. Now, as we all know, it's much easier to take down an opponent when you're all ganging up against him. In Blood Bowl this is called assisting. Players on both teams can assist in a block, which means assist can be used offensively as well as defensively. Now, in order to assist in a block, a player needs to be adjacent to the opposing player involved in that block, and they can't be in any other opposing player's tackle zone. Each assisting player on your side will give your player a +1 strength. So for instance, in this block with the strength 5 mummy against the strength 3 lineman, this thrower can add a +1 to the human strength because he is adjacent to the blocking player, the opposing player involved in the block, but not adjacent to any other enemy. So that means he'll add +1 to the human, giving a total strength of 4. Well, compared to the mummy's strength of 5, that still won't do him any good. But if there were 2 more humans involved in assisting, like these 2 over here, also adjacent to the mummy, but not adjacent to any other enemy's tackle zone, that would mean the human player has a strength of 6 and will now actually be stronger than the mummy because he gets 1, 2, 3 assists. Now, if another enemy would be standing next to these 2 humans, even though he is not next to the player being blocked, he still would block out their assists because they are now in another player's tackle zone. And just to show you one more example of assisting, I've got this block over here where this human will block the human player again. The undead player will have a strength of 5 for the mummy, +1 for the ghoul assisting. The ghoul is adjacent to the human lineman being blocked, but not to any other human player. And the human player will have a strength of 5, his own strength of 3, +2 for these human players next to the mummy, but not adjacent to any other undead player. The third action a player can declare is a blitz action. A blitz action is a special action which can only be taken once during each of your turns, so only one player on your team can take the blitz action in a single turn. A blitz is a special type of movement in which you also make a block. Now, the block counts as a single square of movement and it can be used at any point during your movement. So in order to take a blitz, let's take a look at this example where the mummy wants to block the human player. The mummy has a move value of 3. He declares a blitz action and takes 1 movement step towards the opponent. He then takes the block as normal. As the mummy is the stronger player, I roll 2 dice. Say for instance, I'll pick this result and push back and knock down the opponent. As with a normal block, even when making a blitz action, you get the free movement for follow-up if you so desire. Say, I would like that, and move my mummy towards the square the player previously occupied. This would have cost me 2 movement in total. 1 movement for moving towards the human player and 1 movement for taking the block. The follow-up move doesn't count as a movement point. So I still would have 1 movement point left of my 3 and I can then decide to move my mummy over there, for instance.